In today's episode of Garage Talks, we'll be stripping the front axle down, going through it all, just showing you how different the Rebels are compared to the formulas. Now this is going to be a part one of part two, so we better get cracking. Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to Garage Talks with me, AJ Davis, and Ellie Papworth on the camera. Now, Rebels Racing is a full contact formula, or bump and nudge. We can't take people to the wall and fence them like the F1s. But that doesn't mean we don't get a lot of damage. Now we're going to take you today just to show you what we commonly change on the track or at the track. And then what we'll do in the workshop, we'll go through each different component, what they work, how you can fix them at your garage or your workshop. And we'll just take you for a general trip. Now, Rebels are classed as an open wheel racer, and I know the wheels are majority covered by the arches, but these are only made of flimsy rubber. So when you remove the arches, you are left with everything exposed. Now, when you take the wheel off, that is all you're left with. And quite a few people at home may be wondering, well, why is there no shock, no spring, no coilover? Now we'll get into why, because it's quite a unique aspect of Rebels. But to start with, we need to start taking bits off. Now, if we was to bend stuff at track, and don't worry folks, we'll get onto it later on in the video, just what each individual part is. One of the most common things to bend, if I can get my needle in that way I want it, is a steering arm. Now, steering arms are super easy, and I've lost bolts and things. 17 mil. I tried to prepare for this, but clearly missed the 17. So, for a steering arm, there's different variations of bolts. I use socket caps, whereas some people will use normal bolts or normal sets, so they'll have a 17mm spanner to go in from the bottom or side. So with a little bit of ugger-duggerage, we'll change from a 17 to a 19. We are, just like that, ready to change a very common part that bends. Now the way this bends, right here, it just bends up. I don't know if I've got it in the workshop. If I have, I'll put one on screen. But that is one of the common things that breaks. And 2 seconds, and she's off. So that leaves us with a floppy wheel, a stiff wheel. So we'll get into, silly me. She's stiff because I left the bolts in. Do as I say, not as I do. There we go, floppy. Now, when we're at the track, we don't usually take all the brake assembly off. What we'll do is we'll slide the swivel hub and the stub out. Now, these all might sound like weird technical things, but everything will be explained. So it's 117 at the top, using spanner, grab from the side. And there we have one wheel assembly. Now, one thing on the wheel assembly that does bend is the swivel. There is ways to sort of get around when it bends, because the way Hans, the guy who's created the formula, has made them, you can flip them upside down. So if your wheel's too cambered and you've bent a stub and you're going out on the next race and there's not a lot of time, you can spin your swivel hub around and it does go back on. That's the steering off. Now next are these little funky things. Now what these little bars do, they're quite important, because if you break a suspension rubber, all this steering arm likes to go upwards. So they're in there for a very important job. Again, just 2 17s, and she's straight out. Look at that. Now, some people at home or watching may have noticed a little rubber sandwich block. Now that is the Rebel suspension. We'll tell you how it works in a bit. But to take your stub mount off, you've got 2 17mm that connect you to the rubber block. And then you've also got 2 17mm at the front that connect you to the trailing arm. Now, I know I'm just throwing bolts around. Don't worry. We'll be doing a list of what size bolts you need and where. And some people will notice that's very loose. We'll explain that as well. Because I only found that out about 4 years back, and I've been doing it 10 years why that's loose. So that eliminates that can move freely. Now, the reason we're doing it from this side is you've got the swell pot and the steering column. Now it's easy to take the stub off this side and then take the rest of it out the other side because there's nothing in the way. So to get the last 2 bolts out, need a little extension, 17mm again. If we don't drop it on the floor. Now, spanner on the top, and we go in from the underneath. There's one. And then it's the same for the other way. Spanner on the top of the nut, or top of the bolt. Find the hole in the chassis. And within 2 minutes, you can get the bolt out. Ready to change your stub mount. So that is 3 big components of the suspension ready to take out in 2 minutes. Now, we repeat this process on the other side, but this one is quite quick, a lot easier. So we need everything to go to the other side. And it's easy to do it without the arches on, but no one's taking the arches off to do suspension components at the track. So simply again, find out what nuts we've got on. On this side we've got nuts. Take the extension off. And go for the 19 again. There we are. Moving off. Now, we're showing you it at a speed that we usually work at the track, because with how the structure of the racing is, sometimes you don't have a lot of time to sort of relax and take things steady and go at your own pace. It's quite a mad rush. And doing it by yourself, it does get quite a bit hectic. And I've lost my Allen key. Ah, Allen key. Where's it gone? Oh, I've took it round there. Now, if you're wondering, or if you're looking at home and watching, thinking, oh, it's only taking age 2 minutes to take this front end off, I could do that. And if you're thinking that, you most definitely can do that. And, oh, I've not removed this. Again, do as I say, not as I do. Sorry about that. After a good bit of hammering, it's ready to come out. So just like the other side, she slides out. And we'll take the other stub and the centre bar out and sit that in there. And there we have it, nice and simple. Right, everything's out. We'll head over to the bench and we'll just show you what exactly each component is, what it does, and we'll go down bolt sizes. So I'll get up, we'll go down the back. We are at the bench. Now, everything you see here is a component of the front axle, barring the brakes. Now we're going to be getting onto the brakes when we do the regular maintenance video, because that ties in with that. So, as we say, every component here is a part of the Rebel. Now, one of the biggest factors, fun factors, or biggest talking points of a Rebel are these two things. Now, these are our suspension. And I don't know if the camera will pick it up, but they are rubber blocks that have Rebels Racing stamped in there. I don't know if you'll be able to see it. We'll get a better photo if you can't. Now, it's a lot different than your standard spring shock coilover combination. And the reason for that is these are a lot more cost effective. They definitely add a fun factor to the racing, and they're a lot quicker to replace. Now, one thing race fans will notice, there's not a lot of adjustment here. You don't have a lot of rose joints or ball ends just to adjust. You've only really got your rose joints on your steering rack to adjust tracking. Now, the reason for that is Hans Kiramar, the creator of Rebels, he wanted to create a formula that was easy to race if you had a lot of money, not a lot of money, a lot of knowledge, or not a lot of knowledge of setups. So, to build a Rebel front end, you need to start with a centre bar. Now, this centre bar is a bit of box section, mounted at the ends with some tubes in it. To bolt to start, you have these funky things. Now, these are what we call stub mounts. They're the same box section as the centre bars, of course, with a plate on. Now, what we'll do is I'll just start bolting these together, and we'll put the sizes of all the bolts we use. Nice and simple. Now, a top tip from Crew Chief when you are putting the front end back in the Rebel is not to tighten everything up straight away. The reason for this is it gives you a little bit of movement where you need it, so you can get everything slotted in. Now, my lovely little display is going to get ruined a bit by me not measuring where everything goes properly, but that's all right. I think we can get around that. Of course, we'll be taking a lot of this stuff off when we go to fit it in the Rebel, because there's a certain way we like to do it. Now, a lot of other teams may have their way. I'm just going to show you the way we do it. Now, 3 pieces bolted together, that is your main axle. Now, these pieces here, the little wobbly bits, they have these. Now, these are the front trailing arms, simply held in with 2 M10 bolts and an M12, or I believe it's 1/2 inch Imperial. I use metric just because it's easy to get my hands on. And they simply bolt through like that. If I can get the nut on. There we go. And then same for the other side. Quite simply, trailing arm, get the bolts in. I'll tell you what, I'll make a little bit of room. Make a little bit of room. Get the nuts that I dropped earlier. I can only find one, I'll stick one on. And there you have more of a complete front end. So, that's your main components. These are the main bits that will bend. You've got your centre bar, this will bend in the middle, so it bends like that. When that bends, you get a lot of camber. So where your wheels decide to go in. To counteract the camber, you can either replace it, or if you want to stick it in a press, we'll try and balance this. You can try and bend this straight, so it's not a banana, it gets straight. A lot of the bits you buy off hands and a lot of the bits off Rebels, you can fix them at home if you've just got a simple press, or sometimes you can do it with a vise. It's a little bit harder, but it is doable. Now next to bolt on, we're gonna take our front end, set this off to a side, let it cook at 300 degrees for 5 minutes. We're gonna move on to our hub and steering assembly. These little funky things that are a solid bar with a nice bit of tube welded on. These are your stubs. In your stubs, or with your stubs, you have a little grease nipple. We'll get back onto grease nipples and fixing or having a little grease up, I don't know. These are your swivel hubs. Now, these are created, the new ones, the old style, could only be mounted one way. And if you look, these are the same top and bottom. So if you bend them and this part bends up and you need to quickly, sort your camber out if you've got too much camber, what you can do is you can take this off, flip it around, pop it on, or stick your wheel and hub back on and see if it fixes the problem. It's only a temporary fix, but it'll get you out. Now, another little top tip from Crew Chief is the kingpins. Now, me personally, I just have bad luck. The two M8 bolts that hold in the kingpin sometimes like to wind themselves loose and the kingpin drops out the bottom. Now what we do is we tack weld a little washer. We tack weld a little washer on the bottom so that the kingpin can't slide out. Now, we should have done that a few years back, seasons back, because we've had it a few times where the two bolts have came loose and it's DNF'd us. So, the kingpin has two flats, top and bottom, and therefore the bolts to press against. I'll get that centered in, spin it around. There we go. Now these are M8 bolts. I use Allen key ones or socket caps. People can use what they want, and there we have it. That is your stub, swivel hub with a kingpin. Now next, we have the steering arms, as we spoke about before, where these like to bend easy. What some people do is they'll reinforce these and weld bits on and mess about with them. You can do that. The only problem is you then go from this being your weakest point in the whole axle to then being a stronger point. Now the only problem with that is when you inevitably bend something, rather than bending a part that's quite easy and quick to replace, you'll bend something that's not. So we leave these alone. Now for these, two simple bolts. Again, you can either use socket caps, which are a 12.9 high tensile, or you can use just standard bolts. Now the standard bolts are a little less strong because they're only an 8.8, and we went through a plethora of breakages with steering arm bolts over the years, so we decided to beef them up a little bit. Now unfortunately this is easier to do in the car than it is on a table, but we're giving it a good go. There is one completed steering assembly. I don't know, maybe. Now, we'll set this one off to the side and we'll do the other side. So it's the exact same thing. Stub mount, as you can see, they are angled, they are sided. So when you take your Rebel apart, just make sure that you put them all back in the same way, because if not, your wheel will be set back. And again, swivel hub, kingpin drops in. You may have to use a bit of a persuasion stick sometimes to get them in. Now when you pop these in, it's important that the tops of them are flush. If the tops aren't flush, steering arms won't bolt down flush. Wind them in. We're only doing everything hand tight on the bench because it's all got to come apart when we put it in the Rebel. Steering arm again. Now this side, for some reason, we have just normal bolts. Now these will be getting either changed out or left because I will inevitably bend them on our first race at Mendips. Now we hope you're following along because we are going to be having an exam. Ellie's looking at me like, stop with the dad jokes, they're bad. And there we have it. 2 steering assemblies ready to go. Now these, quite simply, as we saw, taking them apart, and the front axle's done in the oven. Let's bring that back out. These simply just slide in. It's advised to pop a little bit of grease in them just to make it easier for them to come back out. But we're going to raw dog it. Now they slide in. The stubs, I should have shown you. The hole nearest the tube is a through hole, so it's just a hole all the way through. And the one on the top is threaded. The old style stubs didn't have a thread through it, it just had a flat, and they had a nut on the stub mount. Now Hans has changed the design a little bit. There's just a M10 bolt that goes through the top, and an M10 bolt that goes as a pinch bolt. Now, what we've found with these is you do have a little bit of movement. We advise tightening this one first, because what that'll do is it'll draw the stub up and then tighten your pinch bolt. And that just locks it all in place. Same with this side. M10 in the top first, and then M10 through the side. Lovely jubbly. The blocks. Now, you don't need to take these off. These ones are a little bit bent, a little bit battered. I still run them. We just have, you tend to find sometimes with Rebels, some parts that are bent aren't that bad. I know it sounds weird, you know, bent parts are not as good as new parts. But when the cars are racing, they sort of bend themselves straight. Now these are usually left bolted on the car. And there you go. There's the other one there. They get bolted to the stub mounts. We're not going to bolt these on because these are going to come off. But when you've got everything in, you need to sort your hubs out. So if I just move all my stuff this side to give us some room, and we'll slide it all down, and we'll focus on this side. Now she's a little bit on stiff side, probably because I haven't tightened the bolts up. Let me do that quickly. You grab another spanner. And we are back with tools. Now the reason this side is stiffer than the other side is socket caps. They have a rounded head, whereas bolts obviously have a hex head. There we go. Bit better. Let's get to the side tightened up. There we are. Ugger duggerage applied. Now she's a little bit better. Hubs. That's a hub complete. And this is a hub and separate bearings. Now, back to the hubs, they've got a seal that's pressed in there. This one doesn't. It's split. But the way these go is you get your big taper bearing. That goes in first. Your seal goes in top. Little roller bearing. And then you've got a washer with a slot. That goes on. Then that goes on. So again, bearing on first. This will be all in case you have to take the bearing out when there's a seal on it. Hub goes on. Little bearing goes on. Find out where your flat is, because there's a machined flat on the swivel hub. Put your washer on, put your nuts on, and there you have it, hub's on. Now we are missing the brake backing plate, but that's on the car. But again, we'll get on to assembling all that jazz when we come to do the brakes. So as for steering, there we go. Now, steering rack. One common thing, and one thing I overlooked when I started, was you have these funky little bushings. Now, these play a massive job in the steering. The rose joints, they have a 5/8 UNF thread, and the bolts that go through them, they are 1/2 inch, so they're a different size. Now these little funky bushings take up the difference. You know, if you don't have them in, your steering will be all sloppy. And all they simply do, when you've got it in the car, 1/2 inch bolt goes through here, rose joint comes up, so it's underneath, and that's your steering. Steering's held in with 2 simple clamps, held in with M10s. So they go through your chassis, your steering rack, which is out of a Moggy Thou, Morris Man 1000. And that's it, that's as simple as they are. There's not much else I can say on the table or show you, so we shall head back to the Rebel, get all of this installed, and then I think, judging by the time, it's time to feed pudding and get home.